Okay, year 10, year 11, sorry. Year 11, let's have a look at what we're meant to be doing today. And we're doing exercise 409, all the questions, and we're graphing quadratic equations. All right, now these 4 steps are important. Is it first step, is the graph positive or negative? Is it concave up or concave down? What's the y-intercept? Where is the vertex? And does it have roots? And if so, what are they? So let's have a look. So here's 409, and this one's going to be talking about the axis of symmetry. They're introducing this slowly, but we've already covered this. Now the axis of symmetry, because all quadratic equations are symmetrical. Come on, give me my eraser. So, and they're going to use the quadratic formula to illustrate to you the axis of symmetry. Now, we already know the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the vertex, and the vertex is when x equals minus b on 2a. Now, why is that? Well, all quadratic parabolas are symmetrical. So the 2 roots, and there are always 2 roots, even if it's a double root or if they're imaginary, there are always 2 roots. And the 2 roots exist where the quadratic equation equals 0, and that can be solved by using the quadratic formula, which is here and here. Now, the quadratic equation gives you these 2 roots, whether they're imaginary or whether they're a double root. And if you split the quadratic equation, now remember the quadratic equation is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. But it's like a fraction. You can just, like if you've got 2 plus 5 over 3, well that's like 2 over 3 plus 5 over 3. So I'm going to split this quadratic equation, negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So this bit, it's negative b on 2a plus all this or minus all this. So that means that negative b on 2a is right in the middle when x equals negative b on 2a. Because remember, this quadratic equation is the solution, x equals. So that'll tell us what x is, and it's right in the middle. So it's the axis of symmetry. It's a vertex, because that'll give us the x value of this vertex down here. Now, if that's the x value, how do I find the y value? I just sub it in. So that is the x value. To find the y value, you just find f of negative b on 2a. And you sub negative, whatever that value is, and you'll get the y value. All right? So that's all we need to know for now. So let's have a go at some of these. Now, why is it jumping to question number? I don't know why that says number 8. It's obviously number 1. Oh, there we go. It's fixed up now. Must be something wrong with my PDF view. Righto. So let's do a nice easy one. We'll do the first one. There's a parabola. Y, this is question 1, equals x squared plus 2x. And it doesn't have a constant. And please remember, when you're doing that, come on, give me my colour. Your A, your B, and your C. So in this case, the A is 1, the B is positive 2, and the C is 0. All right, if there's nothing there, you can just write 0. So, find the equation of the axis of symmetry. No worries. X equals negative B, negative 2, on 2A, 2 times 1. Negative 2 on 2, x equals negative 1. And find the minimum value. Well, how do we know it's a minimum value? Because over here we have a positive parabola. The A, The A is a positive number. It's 1. It's greater than 0. So that means the curve is concave up. And we've just found the x value of this point. We've found x equals -1. To find the minimum value, which will be wherever this point is, that'll be the minimum value. It's going to be -1. We have to find the y value. So the y value, we put it into the equation. -1 squared plus 2 times -1. -1 squared is 1. And 2 times -1 is -2. -1. The minimum value is -1. Now I'm just going to get my answers up to make sure I've got them here. And 409, question 1. Yep, minimum value. Now, that is the minimum value, by the way. -1 is the minimum value because we're talking how high and low it goes. So maximum, so it's only the y value. The minimum value is the y value, and it equals -1. Okay. They're pretty similar. I'll jump down to question 4. So if I have a look at question 4, okay, this is an y equals -x squared plus 2x minus 7. Plus 2x minus 7. My a is -1, my b is +2, and my c is -7. It says find the axis of symmetry and the maximum value. Well, how do we know it's a maximum value? Because a is a negative number, it's less than 0, that means this curve goes like this. So hence it has a maximum value, and the maximum value occurs when x equals minus b on 2a. So let's find that. X equals minus b is 2, so minus 2 on 2a. 2 times -1. Minus 2 on -2 is 1. Now again, we have to find the y value. So what's the y value? Well, y equals -1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 7. Well, -1 plus 2 minus 7, I do that on my calculator, should get -6. And that's it. The maximum value is -6. Okay. They're pretty easy. So questions 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get to 5, it says find the vertex. Well, that's exactly doing the same thing, all right? The same thing. So the vertex here for this one would have been 1 and -6. You're just finding the vertex. All right? So 5's the same, 6 is the same. I want to get on to question 10, 9 and 10, but I'm going to do one of 7 first. So let's have a look at 7. So I'll create some space here. And in question 7, and remember, the more you do of these, the better you will get. So question 7, find the equation of the axis symmetry, the coordinate of the vertex for each of these. All right. A is positive, B is a negative parabola, C is positive, D is negative, and E is positive. So I want to do a positive and a negative. So I'll do B and C. So 7B. It's a negative parabola. Y equals -x squared minus 8x plus 1. So find the coordinates of the vertex for each of these. Okay, well, the vertex will be when x equals -b, or minus 8, on 2a, 2 times -1. So that's going to be 8, because negative is that, on -2, So x equals -4. To find the y value of that, I just put it in. Now remember, use your calculator. -4 squared, and remember there's a minus out the front, minus 8 times -4 plus 1. Now, here's where I want to we'll use our calculator and watch this. I'm just going to put, if you do this, you don't have to worry. If you write -4, press equals, that's my answer. I don't have to use parentheses. All right? So I'm going to do this, and then I'll do it with parentheses so you can see. Because it's in my, I'll do it with parentheses first, and I'll come back to it. So what have I got? Negative, bracket, -4 squared minus 8 times bracket -4, close the bracket or parentheses, plus 1, 17. So y equals 17. And that's our vertex. -4, write it as a coordinate, and 17. I just want to show you on the calculator the way to avoid all that negative and putting things in brackets. If you write -4 and just goes equal, when you do this as your answer now, your calculator automatically puts the brackets in. So negative, my answer, squared, minus 8 times my answer, plus 1, 17. Now that's particularly handy when you've got fractions and other things in there. You don't have to keep retyping it in. It's just quicker. All right, the other one I wanted to do was 7c, because it's a positive. And what do we got? Y equals 3x squared plus 18x plus 4. Okay. Vertex is when x equals minus b on 2a, so minus 18 on 2 times 3, minus 18 on 6, -3. Okay, well y will equal 3 times -3 squared plus 18 times -3 plus 4. And again, go to your calculator. I'm going to use that trick I just showed you. -3, that's now my answer. So go 3 times my answer times my answer squared plus 18 times my answer plus 4, -23. And the vertex is -3, -23. Okay. So that's finding the vertex. The other word they use for the vertex is a thing called turning point, because that's where the curve turns around. So what you're doing here is you're finding the turning point. So I'm going to do F and I, 9F and I, so you can see how we do these. Remember, the more you do, the better you will get. And I've chosen 9F and I because one is positive and one is negative, which means I'll get a maximum and I'll get a minimum. So 9F. F of x, get used to the terminology, that's just y, equals 2x squared plus 3x plus x, minus 3. Okay. There's my A, there's my B, there's my C. Remember, if there's nothing in front of it, there is a 1 there. Okay. I know that this is a positive parabola, so we're going to get a minimum, and the minimum is going to be, or the turning point, so it's a minimum. So we are going to get a minimum. We have a minimum. And how do we find that? Exactly the same way. X equals minus B, so minus 1 on 2A, 2 times 2. Oh, minus a quarter. And this is going to become, that calculator trick's going to be really good now. So f of minus a quarter, we're just subbing it in. It's going to give us the y value. 2, now even though I'm going to do it on my calculator, I'm going to write my substitution in. So negative a quarter. So anyone looking at my work knows what I'm doing. Plus negative a quarter minus 3. But on my calculator, I'm just going to go, right, I'm just going to go negative 1 over 4. Doesn't matter where the negative is. That's my answer now. So now I'll just go 2 times my answer squared plus my answer minus 3. And I get that, which is negative 25 on 8. But if I want it as a mixed numeral, negative 3 and an eighth. And what was that? 9f. Yep. Now, let's have a look at 9i. It's a negative. Oops. F of x equals negative 3x squared plus 3x plus 7. So this is a negative parabola. So at that point means we're going to have a max. We're going to have a maximum. And the turning point, it's just the same. X equals minus b, so minus 3 on 2a, 2 times negative 3, which gives me minus 3 on negative 6, which is positive a half. How do I find the y value? Sorry, use the right terminology that they've written. You could write y equals, it doesn't matter. So I've got to find f of a half. So it's going to be negative 3 half squared plus 3 times a half plus 7. Bang, calculator out again. I'm going to write 1 divided by 2, 0.5. Now that's my answer. So I've got negative 3 times my answer squared plus 3 times my answer plus 7. And if I want that as a mixed numeral, as a fraction, 7 3/4. So the turning point is a half and 7 3/4. Let's double check that. Yep, and it's a maximum. Okay, so you should be okay if you do lots of these at finding the vertex, or as they term it, the turning point. It can have two names. It exists in two different things. It has just two different names. Later on, you'll understand why we call them a turning point when we do calculus. So now in question 10, they ask us to, and it says 18 there, but it's 10, to find the x-intercepts using the quadratic formula, and to find the maximum or minimum and find that value, and then sketch a graph. And then they want you to solve it graphically. Now, that's a little bit ridiculous. You can't, because to sketch by hand a quadratic equation is very hard. You'd have to plot a lot of points to get a really accurate measure. So you're not meant to solve these graphically. They say in the syllabus, being able to solve things graphically, but I think they'll give you a picture and you won't actually have to graph it. So let's do one of these, two of them, and I'll do a positive and a negative. So I'll do C and E. So this is 10. Don't worry about the fact it says 18. 10, C. So what have we got? Y equals x squared minus 6x plus 1. Now when you're doing this, go through those steps that I said at the beginning. Is it positive or negative? Well, a is positive, so it's a positive parabola. What's the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is 1. What's the vertex? Let's go. X equals negative b minus minus 6 on 2a, 2 times 1. So that gives me positive 6 on 2. The x value is 3. What's the y value? Well, the y value equals 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 1. Even though you can do that in your head, do it on your calculator. 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 1. Negative 8. Now, we've found out that it's positive. We've found the vertex at 3 and negative 8. So let's draw this. Look at that. Perfect set of axes. So we know this thing goes through positive 1. We know the vertex is at 3 and negative 8, so way down here. So it's going to go that way. And I'm just going to extend that. Now, even looking at that, you can see that I haven't really done this to scale. So to solve this graphically would be very, very hard. To find these points, these roots, graphically, what am I going? A half? What's that going to be? 4 and a bit? I don't even know. I haven't drawn it to scale. So to find these, I'm going to use a quadratic equation. So remember, what are we doing when we're finding the quadratic equation? We're finding the roots. We're going to let y equals 0, because we're finding the x-intercepts, which means x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals 0. Now, we just go straight to the quadratic equation. X equals negative b, negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 6 squared, minus 4 times AC, 1 times 1, all over 2a, 2 times 1. So I'm going to get 6 plus or minus the square root. Now I do that on my calculator, but I'm going fast here. That's going to be 36 and it's minus 4. So I'll log this out because I don't need it all. It's going to be 32. 36, root 32 over 2. Now, you could write that. So this is 6 plus root 32 over 2. And this is 6 minus root 32 over 2. But we'll just do it on a calculator. So get ourselves a little fraction up here, and we'll do the 6 minus root 32 over 2, 0.17. So 0.17. And let's go back and just change that to a plus. 5.82. 5.82. So this one is 5.82. And that's what you're doing. Now, my graph, which is not to scale, wouldn't be even come close to getting those 2 points. I mean, if I kept going with this, what do we got? 4. It's not even close. To draw that quadratic equation accurately, you need a scale, you need grid paper, you need, and even then, trying to get the points, like you're just trying to work out, well, what is the gradient of this curve? And the gradient is always changing. All right. So I said I'd do one more, and I think I said I'd do E. So let's have a go at E. And that's, remember, your 4 steps. Is it positive? What's the y-intercept? What's the vertex? What are the roots? So here we go. Question 10E. We'll do a negative one. And you need to practice these. You need to do lots and lots. I'll get rid of it all. Yes, do lots of these. Lots of practice. Okay. Because I reckon you'll definitely get one in your prelim exam, and you'll definitely get one in your HSC or something like it. So 10E. What do we got? F of x equals negative x squared minus x plus 3. First of all, this is a negative parabola. The y-intercept is 3. So let's find the vertex. X equals minus b, so minus minus 1, on 2a, 2 times minus 1. So that gives me 1 on negative 2, so I get negative a half. Let's find the y value, and I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm going to use that little trick I showed you earlier. I'm just going to go negative a half. Remember, it doesn't matter where the negative is. Press that. There we go. That's my answer now. So I'm going to sub in, I'm going to write it out first, negative a half squared minus negative a half plus 3. But on my calculator, what I'm going to type is negative my answer squared minus my answer plus 3. I get 13 on 4. Let's see what that is as a mixed numeral. We should know. 3 1/4. 3 1/4. What are we doing? 10E. I'm just checking so that I'll make sure I got it. There we go. So now let's graph it. And, oh no, I don't want that. Here we go. So there's my axes. Label them. Y and X. We know it goes through 3. 1, 2, 3. We know it's negative. We know at x equals minus a half, so about here, minus a half. And this point up here is 3 1/4. There's the vertex. So it's parabola like that. And what we have to find are the roots. Let's put that there. And it's always important, write this as negative a half and 3 1/4. Now, and we should label this y equals negative x squared, what was it? Minus x plus 3. Let's find the roots. Well, the roots are when y equals 0. Therefore, x squared, or negative x squared minus x plus 3 equals 0. Going straight to the quadratic formula, x equals negative b minus minus 1 plus or minus square root b squared minus 1 squared minus 4 times a, negative 1 times 3, all over 2 times negative 1. So on the top, I'm going to get 1 plus or minus the square root. That's going to be 1 plus 12, 13 over negative 2. So it's negative a half plus. Remember, there's a negative root 13 on negative 2, or negative 1 on 2 minus root 13 on negative 2. That's if you keep the negative in the denominator. Well, let's do that on the calculator. What do we got? We'll put the negative in the bottom just so it stays there, so we can have it exactly the same. 1 plus square root 13 over negative 2. And then there's our first one, negative 2.3. So this is negative 2.3, and yes, I know I've abused the equal sign. This other one, if I go back and change that to a plus sign, I change it to a minus sign, 1.3. So it's 1.3 and negative 2.3. Okay. That should be enough for you to get through. Hopefully you'll be right with them. Good luck.